morning, good evening, good afternoon. How are you doing? I wish you all doing great. So today we are going to start with Unit 12. The complement of Unit 10, the second part, is not included in our last exam. So let's move to Unit 12, and also in Unit 11 is not included too. Let's move to Unit 12. I'd like to begin by. So from the title, you can guess that it is a beginning of something, and we are going to complete with the details. Okay, so first let's get ready to listen and speak. Look at these different ways of taking notes. Which do you think is best? See these pictures, 4 pictures in front of you, and try to tell me which style suits you better. If you have another style, you can just mention it. Okay, do you use a system like the ones below when you take notes, or you just record notes in an arbitrary way? Okay, so see the picture 1, we have heading 1, 2, 3, 4. We are taking notes in a sequence. The second picture, we list the main ideas, and then we list on the other side of the page the notes on these concerning these main ideas. The picture 3, we have the main idea and the consequences of this main idea, and let us say the situations that can follow. Picture number 4, we have a place, period, events, importance. So which one of these notes style do you prefer, or do you use mostly? I guess I use the fourth one whenever I decide to travel, and also before traveling actually. And also the first one, I use the first one to organize myself in every day, especially if I have walks. Sometimes I use the second one when I have an important idea or some points that I want to do in my life. So now please, before moving to listening 39, I need you to prepare your ideas about notes or having notes and your style of taking notes, and to speak about it on Telegram. Okay, now let's move to listening A, do's and don'ts. Let's listen to listening 39. Listen to this lecturer give some advice to her students on taking notes in class. Make a note of the advice she gives in the chat below. Okay, so let's listen to listening 39 and decide what we have to do and what we don't have to do.
9. Recording 39.
Now, I'd like to begin by giving you a few pointers on taking notes in lectures. This is a vital skill, so listen up. Most important of all is that you shouldn't try to make a note of everything you hear. A lecture is not a dictation. You have to listen and decide what is important and what isn't. Second, when you make notes, don't write everything in full. Use abbreviations, symbols, numbers, anything to help keep pace. Also, try to organize your notes effectively. Furthermore, you should try to be an active listener. By that, I mean you need to try and predict what the speaker is going to say. So before the lecture, ask yourself what you already know about the topic. And during the lecture, think about where the talk might be heading. Another useful tip is if you miss something, then don't panic. Lecturers usually repeat themselves, certainly the important information, for example by paraphrasing or in summary. Something else you should be sure to do is listen for the main ideas, as well as the details. Otherwise, you won't be able to see the wood for the trees. And finally, after the lecture, you should review your notes as soon as possible. That means basically writing them out again, but this time reorganize them, highlight the main points, and even add your own thoughts and comments in the margin. Reviewing your notes in this way will help everything sink in and make a useful study aid. So, now I've covered that, I'll start with the register.
Okay, so is it clear? Have you recorded some notes? Please, if it's not, or if you missed something, try to drag the line backwards and listen to the conversation again. So here are some of the things that you have to do. For example, you have to use abbreviations, symbols, numbers instead of writing in full text or full names or full information. Also, you have to be a good listener. You have to predict what the speaker is going to say in order to be fast in writing things. Also, avoid writing everything. Don't try to listen to every word of what the speaker is saying and try to record it. This is not true. You have to record only the main idea of something and try to make it as short and simple as possible. And if of course you can make a summary of the main topic or of the main ideas that is inserted by the speaker. So, did you know that the best time to review your notes is within 24 hours of a lecture? Studies show that after this time, it is more difficult to remember important details. So, have you tried to recall some notes in a lecture? And for example, you came back when you have a monthly exam after a month or a week, for example, but actually you don't remember what did you wrote. I guess this is an example, a good example. You have to review your notes daily or within 24 hours for at least in order to put these notes in your mind or in order not to forget them. Okay, so now we are going to move to the next exercise. Exercise 2. Look at the questions below. Answer as many as you can from memory. Then listen again and check. Please try to do this by yourself. For example, you have to remember, I'm going to help you with the first one, which is, what does she say a lecture is not? She said that a lecture is not a dictation. So try to just remember what did she said from B to A, and just come back to listen again to lesson 39, drag the line backward of the video and listen again and correct yourself if you missed something. And tell me if anything is not clear. Let's move to focus on rows, symbols, and abbreviations. Actually, this box is really interesting and you can make use of it in your daily life. So in order to be as fast as possible and you can catch the main idea in time, you have to use rows, symbols, and abbreviation to help reduce the amount you need to write. This will save time and allow you to keep up with the lecture. First, look at the rows, symbols, and abbreviations below. Match each one with a meaning from 1 to 16. Okay, see, from 1 to 16, we can just write one of these symbols in front of you in order to refer to one of these phrases from 1 to 16. So check up the symbols in front of you and try to match them with the phrases from 1 to 16. In addition to, we can use plus. For example, we can use AJ. Important, we can use IMP, and so on. We can use its ETC, which can be pronounced like etc. Also, number 5 message, we can use MSG, and so on for the rest of the 16 phrases that we have. Try to make use of them in daily life in order to put them in your mind always. So now let's see a learning tip. Active listening is a useful skill when taking notes. Decide what is important and what is not, and listen for any guidance that the lecturer gives you. For example, notice when a lecturer repeats something and make sure you know the point down. Actually, people used to always repeating the important point So whenever you meet a person who repeats something, then try to focus on that something and make it as one of the important things, especially if it's your teacher or the lecturer that you have a lecture with. So I guess the important things are clear to be noticed or to take notes for them so you can get help in your exams. So now let's move to speaking C, passing information on. Speaking strategy that is used here is talking about a lecture. So you, for example, you and your friend are going to talk about lecture. Number 1, here are some expressions you can use to talk about a lecture and pass on information. For example, the talk was about, the speaker began by, for example, analyzing blah blah blah. Okay, before completing, these are expressions that you can use in order to tell your friend that or what happens inside a lecture. For example, your friend was absent or is not attending mentally, so that you can use these expressions in order to talk about a lecture and to pass information to your colleague or your friend. Okay, let's complete. So the third expression you can use is, for example, then she argued that blah blah blah. Number 4, after that she reviewed or mentioned blah blah blah, for example, a definition or something else, or an example. The fifth expression that you can use, for example, then she went on to say that blah blah blah. Finally, she blah blah blah. I think the most important or interesting or relevant point was blah blah blah. Okay, so you can use these expressions in front of a conversation or use it at the beginning of what you want to say. So you can talk about lecture to your friend by using these expressions from the first one, which is the talk was about, until the last one, which is I think the most important point was كذا وكذا. Okay, so the learning tip here is a good summary. You should not try to repeat everything, but simply cover the most important points. So if you want to summarize what happens inside the lecture or what are the most important information that the lecturer have raised inside the lecture, you have to be as short as possible and to try to be to the points, not talking about every single detail. Okay, so together with some details of particular interest to the person giving the summary, of course you have to mention only the details that looks to be interesting for the person that you are talking to. It should be well organized. You have to start from the beginning to the very end. You don't have to jump between the informations or among the information. Easy to understand and accurate. So you have to be easy to understand and accurate. So you have to say the information as it is said inside the lecture. I'm going to ask you a question now. Please try to prepare yourself to talk about this in the Telegram on our lecture. Please try to give me an oral summary of this lecture for today. So let's move to the last point in this lecture, which is speaking. If asking questions, the speaking strategy is asking for clarification. So imagine that you are inside a lecture and you want to ask for clarification for some points, so you have to use some expressions. Of course, you are free to use your own style, but if you don't have what to say, you can make use of these expressions that we are going to talk about. Okay, so in exercise 1, look at the questions below and underline each expression you can use to ask for clarification. So we have here questions, and we have to underline which expression is used in order to ask for clarification. Number 1, or A, Could you explain what you mean by the biggest mass migration in the history? So we can use the expression, could you explain what you mean by? This is used for clarification or to ask for clarification. B, can you go into a bit more detail on the cause of labor in China? Okay. Yes, very good. Can you go into a bit more detail on blah, blah, blah? Very good. C, what exactly are you getting at when you refer to the middle class as the backbone of China's success? Okay, so you can use or make use of the expression, what exactly are you getting at when you refer to blah, blah, blah? Okay, D, the fourth expression is, would you expand a little on the impact of China's economic growth? So we can use would you expand a little on. يعني ممكن تضيف على هالموضوع هذا, okay, and blah, blah, blah. Yes. So you can make use of these four expressions, which are, could you explain what you mean by? Can you go into a bit more detail on? What exactly are you getting at when you refer to? And also, would you expand a little on? Blah, blah, blah. Speak up to, imagine you want to ask a lecturer for clarification. Use the ideas below and say your answers aloud. So as we used to do, we have situations from A to F, and we are going to imagine ourselves in these circumstances or situations and try to ask for more clarification concerning these topics. Okay, so A, current economic position. You need to ask for more detail. For example, a current economic position, more detail, you can say, can you go into a bit more detail on the current economic position? You can use one of the fourth expressions that we've talked about in the previous slide, or just have your own style for asking about a clarification. Okay, B, economic superpower, explain. You want the lecturer to explain the economic superpower. So what are you going to say? For example, for me, I'll say, what exactly are you getting at when you refer to economic superpower? Okay. And you can do the same for C, D, E, F. Please do it on the Telegram. The third learning tip that we have today is, it may be possible to take a tape recorder into a lecture and record everything the lecturer says. This is useful to refer to afterwards when you review your notes. Always ask the lecturer's permission first. Of course, you have to ask the lecturer permission first, and then you can just record by your cell phone instead of having a tape recorder. You can make use of this technique inside lectures, and of course nowadays the lecturers are giving you the chance to have the lecture in your laptops or phones, because it is recorded in a video actually. So this is all for our lecture for tonight, and this is all actually for Unit 12 because the previous lecture was postponed, so today's lecture is mixed of two lectures, the first part and second part of Unit 12. I tried to make it as short as possible and deleted some of the exercises that I think are not as important as the ones that we've dealt with. So this is all for tonight. I wish you the best of luck and see you next lectures. Thank you and goodbye.